On today's show, we discuss a newcomer to the Hawks, and that is Larry Nance Jr. I'm joined by Glen Willis of ATL on 29, and all of that is coming up.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1798 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Sunday evening into Monday. And today's podcast is brought to you by the folks at FanDuel Sportsbook. And now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5. You get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. I also want to encourage you at the top of the podcast, as I always do here at Locked On Hawks, so make us your first listen each and every day. Check us out anywhere you get your podcasts. That includes Apple and Spotify and Overcast, etc. On the audio side, we're also on YouTube. On the video side, please like this episode as you are watching it and subscribe via both audio and video platforms. It's a great way to help the show is to double up and subscribe on both platforms. So with all that out of the way, I'll be joined momentarily by my friend Glen Willis of ATL and 29 for another podcast. He's been gracious enough to join me a lot over the summer. We are ramping up episodes in terms of the volume of episodes starting this week. In fact, you're listening to this podcast, it is Monday, September 16th, probably, and it's exactly 2 weeks until Media Day. So we're getting very close to training camp, Media Day, etc. Last week, I talked about some of the mailbag stuff, but in addition to that, some scheduling. The Hawks are going to UGA for a few days during training camp. That's still rolling right now, but we're getting very, very close to the start of the actual season. And for some background here, I recorded an extended conversation with Glen over the weekend, and I'm dropping the first portion of that today and focusing on Larry Nance. As you hear me and Glen kind of tease in that conversation, we talked about Dyson Daniels as well later on, and I'll be sharing that later on this week, actually in two-part fashion. We went long as predicted on Dyson, so there was enough for a standalone episode on Larry Nance. I thought it was pretty interesting because Larry Nance is I would say, under-discussed piece of the Hawks right now for obvious reasons. He came over as kind of not necessarily a throw-in in the trade for Dejounte Murray, but not exactly the headliner either, but an underrated, pretty solid piece. We talk about him as sort of what he can do offensively, defensively, what his role might be, what his future might be, contract stuff, etc. And that's all on this podcast. So stay tuned. Please subscribe to the show. We'll have much more later on this week. Without any further delay, here we go with myself and Glen talking about Larry Nance Jr. I am joined once again by my pal Glen Willis of ATL and 29. Glen, how are you this weekend?
Yeah, good. Trying to catch a break after a busy week, so this is a nice aside for me.
I'm glad I could provide you some respite, and I always appreciate you coming on. As I said probably before I brought you in, you've been doing a lot of these shows with me, which I very much appreciate. And we kind of have a twofold docket today. We might break this up into different episodes. I'm not sure how it's going to work as we're recording this, but plan to get to on what I would say the newcomers. Obviously, the roster is somewhat different anyway. We talked about a couple of the lower level guys early on in the process, but the two major influx guys outside of Reece Shea as a rookie, the two established NBA players who are now joining the team, came from in the same trade. It was Larry Nance and Dyson Daniels. And we've talked about these guys some, but I would say by popular demand, we're doing a little bit of the usual player capsule. We don't always do these. We usually kind of tend to do the guys that are on the roster, but I think especially Daniels, but even Nance are interesting enough, and there's enough data, and we've seen them enough. We also give ourselves some time. I know that you are a sicko, even more so than I am. I'm sure you've watched lots of film. I've watched a lot of film, especially on Daniels since the trade. So while this is not, I have not seen as much of these guys as I have anybody on the Hawks because that's just not possible. I have watched more, and I'm sure you have as well.
Yeah, I think I've gone back and watched 15 whole games on Daniels from last year since the trade. So but with my life, it's a quarter here, a half there, a half there, that kind of thing. So, but did try to, you feel like I saw him play 6 to 8 times a year on average,
Yep.
before he was traded for by the Hawks. So had to go back and go a little bit deeper and get a more well-rounded kind of view of who he's been to this point.
Yeah, it's kind of what you have to do in preparation for the upcoming season, and we're recording this in mid-September, so all things can change. In fact, I want to start with Larry Nance, and one of the reasons why I wasn't sure if we were going to do this with Larry Nance is that he could have been traded at some point, and I'm not going to hold this episode very long because he might get traded any minute. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but he's kind of, if there was one guy on the roster on a real contract that I would say is most likely to be traded before opening night, it's probably Larry Nance. Through no fault of his own. It's just the logistics of the situation. So I'll start there. Does that shock you that I would say that? Does that kind of make sense to you as far as like he's kind of in this auxiliary role right now? It seems like.
Well, I mean, as I know, a player situation is multifaceted, and for me, it starts with he's in a contract year.
Yep.
And if there's one thing agents are going to fight, it's going to be their guy not playing in a contract year. And it's one of those things that organizations try to do the right thing, kind of buy guys in that situation if they can. We could talk about I think he could help the Hawks for sure. He's, we'll talk, for a few minutes on what he does, but I think that might be, there's a logjam on the roster side. There's a logjam at center, right? You got 3 guys that are capable of being no doubt rotational centers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And usually 2 play. And then on the other side, like I said, if the outlook is just like he's not going to play enough to set himself up to get a nice contract next summer, Hawks might try to help him out with that.
Yeah, so as you'll probably hear as we get into this, I think Glenn and I are kind of predisposed to liking Larry Nance and what Larry Nance brings. And it's not a situation where we're discounting Larry Nance as a player. It's a situation more than anything else. You talked about it already, but the expiring contract, the Hawks are not invested in Larry Nance on their own. He was, salary fodder to make the trade work. I'm sure he wasn't seen as negative salary in the trade, but he was the less sexy portion of that return. It was the first round picks, Dyson Daniels, but also you get this rotation solid veteran at Larry Nance, but an expired contract. He's 31 years old. He'll be 32 on New Year's Day. He came into the league pretty late. He was an older rookie, but he's still been in the league for almost a decade, and he's basically been a rotation guy or even like a part-time starter for a full decade in the NBA. Last year was his career low in minutes, but it was still about 20 per game on a playoff team. So he was a real piece of a playoff team even last season. And, it's about $11.2 million on the expiring contract. So a guy who has some value around the league. That's kind of the salary. I've talked about this before on the podcast, but you got Capella making about double what Nance makes. It would be much easier to trade Nance. I think Capella's a better player than Nance at this very second, but they're very different. And it'd just be much easier for a number of reasons to trade Nance because he's cheaper, all that stuff. So that's why I led with that. But he does have value on the court, which we should get into. I think, the last couple of years, especially last year, I looked this up. I think both Cleveland and the Glass and Basketball Reference had him playing like 98+% of his minutes at center. I get a question all the time. I'm sure you have too. It's basically, can Larry Nance play power forward? And the answer is yes, but he has been more of a center. And generally speaking, as guys get older, they tend to play a little bit less down the spectrum. Like they tend to go up the spectrum, which means he's playing more and more center. That's kind of the natural thing. But he is, by size concerns and all that stuff, he's kind of a Kongwu size. That's the short version of it. He's not a massive center, but I think he kind of turns towards center. But okay, Glenn, can he play power forward? Because that is the number one question. Because if he can, there's a little bit more room for him maybe in rotation.
Yeah, and then I noticed when I was going to catch up on podcast this morning, he made an appearance on the Hoop Collective, their live pod. Yep. And they listed him as a forward for the Atlanta Hawks. So that was.
I laughed. I chuckled about that too. I heard that same thing yesterday, late last night, and I was laughing because I'm sure he'd like to be thought of that way. It would help him versatility wise. Yeah. And again, like last year was the first year, just to finish that thought, where he was almost entirely center. Before that, he was about half and half. It was a lot of half and half seasons. The year before that, New Orleans a little bit more center but he's been basically just moving slowly towards full-time center status. But he is a 6'9" guy who can shoot a little bit, all those things.
Yeah. So for me, depending upon lineup construction, I think he can. And I think if the Hawks feel like we've got to find a way to kind of get him in the mix on the floor, my view is I think playing him with Clint is probably not a good idea.
Agreed.
Right. I think playing him with a Conway, you get some defensive versatility. You could, kind of interchange them between 4 and 5 on defense, but they both have enough passing, a little bit of shooting, have more offensive functionality in terms of ball handling, DHO, just things like that. They can play on the move more than Clint can. And so whether that's, putting one in the corner, one in the pick and roll, and they're both probably equally functional shooters with low volume, at this point in their career, but because they can catch the ball, move the ball, dribble, handle the ball a little bit, and kind of just play an emotion offense and kind of be plug and play for each of them. I think offensively, depending on matchups, that Okongwu plus Nance could help. Now on defense, I would think you'd want Nance probably to play center and Okongwu to be out more space more, just because Nance is older at this point in time. I don't know if we'll see 300 minutes of that this year. I mean, it's hard for me to know, but it is a way to get Nance on the court. And if there are times where you're gonna play a little bit smaller, 1 through at the 1 and the 2, Kobe plus Trey or whatever, getting a configuration like that on the back line could help. So I think there are some situations where it can function just fine, but I would lean more towards pairing with a Convu than Clint by a lot.
Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. You've heard me talk about FanDuel many times before, and FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. Something a little bit different for you this time around. However, now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game with YouTube TV and the folks at FanDuel Sportsbook. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. When you get there, by the way, FanDuel Sportsbook, you will know, is awesome and easy to use. They have all stuff you're looking for across the sports betting space, from over-unders to point spreads, money lines, player props, live betting, future bets, and much more. The app is safe, it's very secure, and they cover the entire range of sports as well. That includes the NBA, as you listen to this podcast, WNBA, NFL is in full swing now, college football, of course, MLB, golf, tennis, soccer, hockey, auto racing, boxing, MMA, and so much more. And now is an awesome time to sign up with the folks at FanDuel Sportsbook. And all you have to do is visit FanDuel.com to get started. One more time, just visit FanDuel.com and check out America's #1 sportsbook. So this is pre-training camp as we're talking. And while I always give this caveat about everybody on the team, even more so with Nance, especially, and also Daniels to some extent, we just don't really know what they're going to do until they do it. With all the other guys, we've seen glimpses of what Quinn might think about lineups, things like that. He's been on the record about guys. Unless I missed it, and I don't think I did, no one in the organization has even talked about Larry Nance that I've been aware of. So that's one of those things where we're just not sure. We're going off of what we've seen and what we've heard. By the way, a guy that everybody seems to love around the NBA, Larry Nance, very respected veteran. That's worth noting. And you like to have those guys around on your team. I do want to get in a little bit to both sides of the floor, what he kind of does just in our normal format. Let's start with the offense, actually. Interesting player in that he does a lot of things well, but is a tiny usage guy. At least the last few years, he's like 12% usage, which is like, just for everybody who doesn't, that's very small. He's not really doing a lot with the ball in his hands, although he does have some DH. You mentioned DHO earlier. He has some good passing ability for a center, etc. But he has been efficient. 65% true shooting in the last 2 years with New Orleans. That's a really good figure. Again, not a high volume guy, but someone who has been able to finish effectively. Took more threes earlier in his career, actually, like back in Cleveland when he was playing a little bit more than he was in New Orleans, but still takes some, like, let's just say more than a Kongwu. Like, he's not a 1 per game guy. He's more like a 2 or 3 per game guy, and shoots them reasonably well. Not an elite guy, doesn't get closed out on a ton, but some versatility there while finishing well at the rim. That's like kind of the top line of like his scoring efficiency numbers. But let's just say in both the roles, like if he's playing center or if he's playing power, what is he capable of doing to help you on offense?
Yeah, he's just smart, functional, responsible. It's kind of the words that go with veteranship in a lot of ways, right? Where you just trust him to kind of do what you ask him to do and to stay in the role within the role that you're asking him to stay within. He's not going to kind of try to push the boundaries and go do things that you're not asking him to do. And that's one where, on the Hoop Collective podcast, Brian Windhorst mentioned they wanted him for his veteran leadership, and even though we haven't heard anything with the Hawks, that seems to line up for me. They didn't have as much of that last year. And I think he does bring that for sure. He's been around. He's played deep into postseason on some teams, and things like that. So for me, just a guy who's going to do a competent job at all the stuff you ask your center to do. And for him, having a little bit broader kind of ball skills than say Clint does, right? Then I just think that he's not going to stop the ball. The ball's going to move. He's going to help the ball move. He's going to help set screens. He's going to find little things to do that help his teammates all the time. And so it's just that constructive player, that responsible player with, a decent amount of ball skill to kind of help you drop him into your offensive template and not have to kind of work around the limitation that he has. It's not like he has this big towering strength in any one area, but he's good enough kind of in all the areas you'd want your center to be good enough for a connected player, a supporting offensive player in him.
Yeah, like I said, not a huge score, but like I went through kind of the numbers. Like he's really pretty good and measures pretty well at almost everything. Finishing around the rim, floater range, 3-point shooting as again low volume, but he can make them. Passing like 14% assist rate the last 6 years combined. That's a really good number for a center in particular.
Yep.
Like that's actually about double what Okongwu's is, and Okongwu's not a bad passer as we talked about on his capsule. So like he's a really good hub passer. The Hawks haven't done that a lot, but and we'll harken back, and I'll just plug this as well. You and I talked about like Onyeka very recently on the show for 2 parts, and talked about the potential to kind of level it up a little bit this year of Onyeka being more of a hub. His is much more of a scoring potential than Nance, but similar. I've got this question a lot, so I guess I'll just ask it now in the offensive section, Glenn. Let's say I know it would break our hearts if they were to just put Clint to the side in some form or fashion, probably via trade. It seems to a lot of people that ask this, like that Okongwu and Nance are very similar. And we've talked about this. I think a lot of that comes from the fact that they're the same size. And I'm not kidding. They basically are the exact same size. At least their listed measurements are almost the same. But how does that overlap work? Like, do you see that comparison beyond the fact that they're on the same team? Does that make sense to you, or is that overstated?
Yeah, I mean, I've used this term before on our capsules before, but to me, I think about an offensive template. And when we talked about Onyeka, we talked about how different Clint is versus Onyeka's, right? Onyeka can handle and pat. Nance, to me, can fit straight into the Onyeka template. Can pass the ball, can move, can make plays on the move, all that sort of stuff, things that Clint struggles to do. And for a team, it's hard to say, okay, when Clint's in, we're going to run basically middle pick and roll. He's going to dive to the rim, slip screens, and we've talked about how advanced he is as a screen setter, but Clint is good at basically that stuff, And then the finishing fell off last year, so that's a factor too. You could just do more with Onyeka in terms of elbow action, moving the ball, swinging the ball, and Nance can put the ball on the floor and attack the rim if there's a small guy that gets switched into the paint. And kind of like Onyeka can, and it's one of those things. It's like you go look at Nance's numbers and you cited them. He's one of those guys. I think Hawks fans are going to find him to be sneaky good. Like I think he's better than most people. He's better than most people realize.
You and I agree fully on that. I think I teased it earlier when I said that. Like he both appeals to people like you and me that like love the little things. Like he's really good at the little things. Takes nothing off the table is what I would say. That's the easy pitch for Larry Nance, is that he doesn't really kill you anywhere. Like he's pretty good everywhere. Solid free throw shooter. Like I've said most of the numbers, but like he's just kind of solid. But also, he's not the same guy he used to be. Like he used to be like kind of an above the rim athlete. Like he had some pretty famous dunks back in LA when he was 25 and not 32. But he's still a pretty good athlete. Like he does a lot of things. I think he becomes a favorite wherever he kind of goes for that reason. Like he's not going to blow you away. I don't think he's going to like take Onyeka off the floor, but let's just say they move on from Clint or something like that, and you need him to play center. Or in the scenario where they're all there, we talked about it earlier, but like he could play with Onyeka some, and that backup power forward spot is certainly up for grabs on some level between DeAndre Hunter and maybe down the line becomes Mo Gay or whatever, but Larry Nance could slide into that role. So I think he would be a guy that even like different kinds of fans like some guys are like, it's very obvious, like fans love or they don't love for whatever reason. I think Nance could kind of be like valuable, I would say popular role player, so to speak. Makes sense to me. I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. And it just got coach's love because, again, he does all the fundamentals. He does all the basics. He's very responsible. He's smart. He plays very smart basketball both ends of the court. And as a veteran, you'd hope that experience kind of feeds into good processing, intelligence, stuff like that. So he could help them this year. If Onyeka gets hurt again, great to have Nance, right? If Hunter gets hurt and you're not ready to kind of move Mohamed Gay into the backup power forward, he could bridge a few weeks, and so he has enough versatility to kind of just help you manage through a situation where if your full rotation is available or what have you, in a way that just trying to like last year, it was Clint and Onyeka when they tried to play them together. And I mean, their defensive numbers were awesome. We've covered that, right? But the offense is challenging, in that sense. So I think his versatility and just how responsible he is, and just his approach to being super fundamentally sound and doing the things he has to do, staying in the role he has to stay in. Coaches love that, and teammates love that.
We'll wrap up on Nance in a second. I do want to mention just a couple defensive things. he was 84th percentile last year in defensive EPM. Like, that's really good. 87th percentile the year before. Part of that's that New Orleans had a really good system. That's worth noting. Like, he was surrounded by some good talent, but I think that he is a plus defender, not an elite guy, but certainly someone who does what he's supposed to do. In contrast to Onyeka, he's a really low foul guy. I noticed that looking at his numbers. Like, he's not super conservative, but not a guy who you're worried about fouling out of games, which might be helpful if you go to Onyeka as the full-time guy and need some more of that, because Onyeka has those documented foul problems. And also, like, he's a steal rate guy versus a block rate guy. Some guys are rim protecting shot blockers. He's okay at that, but he's more of a below the rim playmaker defensively. And I think that'd be interesting too with Onyeka, where Onyeka has good block numbers for a guy his size, etc. Anything else stick out to you on defense with Nance that we should talk about?
No, I think he moves better than most people realize. He does better in space than most people. A lot of that is footwork and technique, but he's still fairly mobile, for a guy. It helps that you're not, 7'1" and 265 pounds. You can kind of move. And so he just does better in space and just really sound defensively. And in New Orleans, they got their big to the level a lot too. They do a lot of hard hedging, against really, really good ball handlers and stuff. And so his versatility scheme wise is helpful, I think, in that sense too. But just, super confident on defense and just, gives you the baseline fundamental stuff that you need from your big man, and just something that he's a guy you don't worry about on that end, setting a good, decent floor as a defensive anchor.
We're not going to go an hour on Nance like we would for most other guys that we've done, but just to wrap it up a little bit on him, mercifully, we won't go an hour on Larry Nance.
Yes.
Who again, I think it's clear that we like. So just to put it in a bow, sort of, let's say nothing changes on the roster in significant ways between now and October 23rd when they open the season, 22nd, whatever date it is. I'll get that down at some point. Do you see him playing on opening night? Are they going to thrust him into that backup power forward role? Like, because there's some politics, and that's why I've tended to stay away from it, because let me know if this makes sense. I think he's too good to get a DNP-CD. I think Larry Nance is too good of a player to not play.
Way too good.
It's just a situation where he's also the third best center on the team, and he's a center. So it's like they have to kind of make him play the backup forward to get him on the court, but also politics are politics. Like, I'm not saying he's going to make a noise. I don't think he would. I think Larry Nance is a respected veteran, but you mentioned at the top of this conversation, expiring contract. I'm sure he'd like to play somewhere else beyond this year, making real money, and you need to be able to play. So, like, how do you envision, again, acknowledge we don't know how this is going to work if they don't clear anything out, and it's just like Larry Nance is on this team the way it is right now?
Yeah, it's so impossible to know, but my view is he needs to play. He needs to play. He needs to be somewhere he can play. And I'm just waiting for, media days. What is it, like 2.5 weeks out? Right?
2 weeks if we're talking right now. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm ready for you or Kevin or Lauren or someone else to ask Glenn, like, hey, what are you doing in the center position?
I will ask
give a totally useless answer.
Yes. I will probably ask. We'll probably ask Landry first. Landry will defer to Quinn. Then we'll ask Quinn, and he will say nothing. And that's what's going to happen. But hey, we'll ask the question. That's all we got.
You got to do your job, right? Regardless, right? So for me, I'm in total wait and see mode. But I think he needs to play, and I think he can help them. And I think it's kind of Quinn and his staff's job to figure out a way to kind of navigate the rotation that allows him to get on the floor. And I think if he's just outright not playing, his agent's going to be calling Landry like 3 times a week and being like, we got to do something because my guy's in a contract here. And on the Hoop Collective, he didn't say, I'm so excited. I don't know his personality, but it wasn't like he was like, I'm so excited. He was like, I'm going to Atlanta. We found a house, or we're kind of going.
He's a vet. I mean, that's the thing. He's a 10-year veteran, so he's not. It's not going to be the whole like new car thing. Like he's just going to be. He's a pro. And by the way, this is his 5th team. It's not like he's been one place. He's kind of used to being bouncing around. But you're right. I think it can be overstated sometimes, the politics, but it also could be overlooked, and it shouldn't be. Also, Clint's on expiring too. So it's a similar situation there where Clint's more established in this culture, but he's expiring. Like, they're not going to stop playing him if he's on the team. I do think that, there'll be a lot of focus on opening night and what happens out. And I always do that too, is my like, hey, on opening night, that's like my stand-in for the regular rotation. But also, they might be able to, Onyeka's had some injury issues, of course. They could be careful with Clint. I think it would not be the worst idea to sit Clint on some back-to-backs and just try to manage his body a little bit this season. that's the kind of way to play Larry Nance more sometimes. It's just that if everybody's available, which again won't happen a lot, I wish it would, but it's the NBA. Most teams are not healthy most of the time.
Yep.
But I think that maybe the way to do it is to say, all right, Larry, you're going to play 12 minutes a game when everybody's available, mostly at the backup 4, next to Onyeka, and maybe that's it. And I can already hear Hawks fans yelling now, what about Jalen Onyeka? I get it. You don't want to do – but it's a good problem to have, but it also is a crowded front court, and everybody's going to be there.
Yeah, and the thing is he is a no-brainer, unquestionable, full-fledged rotational center.
Agreed.
Right, and so if you bury him on the bench, you're not building goodwill with the player population writ large. So
yeah, he's too good.
I think they got a few weeks to kind of figure this out, and they don't have to figure it out right at the beginning of the season. But if the situation is like, we're going to play Clinton Onyeka, then like I said, I would expect him at some point.
You and I love Bruno Fernando. That's well documented. It was okay not to play Bruno. Larry Nance is in a different tier of established veteran piece that has to play. He's just too good to not play, and I will be interested to see what Quinn does. Not so much what Quinn says, but what Quinn actually does. Because what Quinn says is kind of a shrug at sometimes, but we like Larry Nance. I think he's a valuable player. I'm not predicting a trade. I still think, though, if you get a team that loses a center somewhere in training camp, he's a guy you call. Like the Knicks, I've been hearing from Knicks fans for a while, like, why won't the Knicks call? Like, they probably should call Larry Nance. A team that has a glaring hole either at starting center or backup center or whatever. Ironically, New Orleans could use a center right now, and that's where he came from. But like teams like that are trying to win that need a center, he would be high on the call sheet for me.
Yeah, for sure. And like for example, I keep thinking like a team like Charlotte, like Lonzo's never really played with a veteran center. Like just playing with a veteran center would be. I said Lonzo, didn't I? I meant LaMelo. But like give him a veteran center. So there are teams with young point guards like Portland. Like I know he was there before, right? But Portland's trying to grow young. So I mean, teams that have young guards could like Nance is like great for teams like that.
So we agree wholeheartedly. All right, that is all for episode 1798 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. We will have more coming up later on this week with Glen Willis coming back to talk about Dyson Daniels in 2-part fashion. Also, other podcasts sprinkled throughout the week. We are ramping things up again to our full kind of in-season schedule. So please stay tuned for that. Please subscribe to this podcast on Apple, on Spotify, on Overcast, Amazon Music, etc. on the audio side, as well as on the video side. Please like this video as you are watching it on YouTube and subscribe on that platform. Ratings and reviews appreciated. And please take a second just now as the season gets closer to share this podcast with your friends, either on social media, via text, via email, Instagram, etc. Please go ahead and share this podcast and get folks on board for the upcoming season. All right, that's all I have on the show today. Please stay tuned. Have a nice week. Start this week off strong as the Hawks will be getting into Media Day again in just only 2 weeks. So stay tuned for all of that, and we'll see you all next time.